My name is Emma, and I am not an alcoholic. Imagine a woman so entrenched in the British drinking culture that her very identity seemed soaked in alcohol, lost in a haze of endless nights and forgotten mornings. Now imagine that same woman, standing strong and clear-headed, 9 years alcohol-free, with the determination and the passion to build an extraordinary life. I'm Emma. I am that woman. I'm no longer allowing alcohol to keep me small. In the heart of my very British social life, I was a life of the party, the ever-ready drinker. I was binge drinking on the weekend and having a couple of sessions during the week. I certainly wasn't drunk every day. To the world, I had it all together. I had a great job, international travel, a great social life. My friends never questioned my drinking. I had a life that ticked all of the boxes. On paper. It certainly doesn't sound like a rock bottom, does it? Beneath the laughs and the rounds of drinks, there's a completely different narrative. One that I'm only fully aware of nowadays. There was this gnawing feeling of not feeling enough. A shadow I was always trying to outpace. That shadow transformed into social anxiety. And I had a strong sense of never fitting in. Alcohol helped me feel like I belonged. And so I drank. The truth is, I drank to numb the nagging feeling of inadequacy. I was drinking to numb the edges of the emotional discomfort I had. I drank to paint over the social anxiety, to put on this mask of confidence and happiness. Alcohol became my camouflage. It became my shield to face the world. It was my mask of choice in a world where I was desperate to belong, and so desperate to be enough for others. At the time, I was oblivious to the hidden costs of my binge drinking and those innocent drinks during the week. My world was spinning, and it just felt as if I was in the middle of the tornado, going with the flow from party to party. Yet now, when I look back, the picture is completely different. And the reality is darker than I wanted or than I could see at that time. Alcohol had become this insidious character of my story, which was quietly gnawing away at my self-esteem, my confidence, my physical health, my joy, my experience of life. Alcohol was that silent character which was constantly stirring up chaos underneath the surface of what seemed to be the perfect life, leaving a trail of destruction behind it, which I was so blinded by the liquor that I just couldn't see it. Drinking was so normal in my social circle, it was so normal in my culture, that nobody even questioned it, let alone myself. Crazy point in my own journey didn't come from a crazy alcohol-fueled evening. Ironically, it was an evening in a rock and roll karaoke place in the middle of Bogota with my father after a couple of beers. It was nothing crazy, it's nothing like the rock bottom that's portrayed in the movies. But to really understand that turning point, let's go back 9 months where it all began. Sunday morning, I was nursing a hangover as normal when my housemate casually challenged me and he said, "Emma, I bet you couldn't stop drinking for 30 days. The immediate fear that surged through my veins was the immediate revelation that I needed. The fear of not knowing what I was going to do on the following 4 weekends. Alcohol hadn't just become a part of my social life, it had become the main focus of my social life. The fear of not knowing who I was without the mask of alcohol. Alcohol had simply become woven into my fabric of my identity of who I was. I was the boozy Brit who always had that drink in her hand. In the face of this 30-day challenge, I saw how deep alcohol had dug its way into my life. And it terrified me when I realized how worried I was about how I was going to spend the next 4 weekends of my life. At that moment, I realized that it was alcohol writing the script of my life. It was writing my story. Everything was based on alcohol. So because I didn't know what my life was going to look like without alcohol and that instant fear that I had, I knew I had to accept the challenge. So I did. And to my surprise, I absolutely thrived. I discovered a whole new energy and focus that I was able to put into my startup, which was on that edge of making or breaking. I took my physical health seriously for the first time in my life. I lost a lot of weight and I felt strong in my body. When the initial 30 days were up, I was in no rush to get back to drinking. I wanted to continue my alcohol-free journey. Fast forward to that night with my dad, that was the second time that I drank after that initial 30-day challenge. Waking up the next morning, I realized that I hadn't picked up those beers because I wanted them. Instead, it was an awkward attempt to assert my independence, a strange dance around the complicated relationship I had with my dad. That morning, as I watched the sun rise over the mountains, I came face to face with that bitter realization. Alcohol wasn't just that social lubricant it had been in my past. It had become my crutch, the thing I needed and relied on to get through certain situations. I had been reaching for that bottle, not just to fit in, but to find acceptance, to silence those voices and that self-doubt that I had. It was a price I paid, not just in pounds and pesos, but in self-dignity and self-worth. In that moment, I knew something had fundamentally shifted inside me. I no longer wanted to dilute life's reality with alcohol, or mask my own vulnerabilities in its numbing embrace. It was in that moment I decided I would not abandon myself and compromise my own feelings of well-being for a fleeting sensation of acceptance from my father or from anyone else in that case. And let me tell you, the road to quitting was not smooth sailing at all. It was a journey. This was over 9 years ago, and the only programs to quit drinking were AA, and I knew that I wasn't an alcoholic. That just wasn't going to be a suitable solution for me. So I was on my own. I grappled with cravings. I dabbled with self-doubt, and I navigated the minefield of socializing without that trusty glass in my hand. Breaking free from the chains of alcohol wasn't just about removing alcohol from my house and avoiding the pub. It was about reshaping my life entirely and my own identity from the ground up. It was a difficult journey of facing myself for the real time. There was no escapism, there was no masking. It was that reality of this is your life. If you're not happy with your situation, Emma, you've created it, and you equally have the power to change it going forward. And there were moments of doubt and temptation in the early years of my journey. I remember one particular Friday evening, I was back in the UK, I was visiting friends, and me and Esme were in the kitchen, open plan, cooking a peat soup for the occasion. There's probably 10, 12 of our friends over for the evening. We were sitting down, ready for the meal. Joanne passed me a glass of white wine, and I said very casually, "No thanks, I'm not drinking right now." And the room went silent. Everybody looked at me in disbelief, and then roared with laughter. It was as if it was the biggest joke on earth. How is the boozy Brit all of a sudden not drinking? They couldn't comprehend it. It was in that moment of struggle and embarrassment that I realized I would prefer to live the rest of my life with people laughing at me in my face than me conforming to other people's standards and expectations of me and living my life in accordance to other people's thoughts and values and beliefs. I just wasn't going to do that anymore. I wasn't going to put myself in that position to do that anymore. And when I realized that my desire to drink was not about the wine, the rum, or the beer, it was about seeking escape from discomfort or feeling like the odd one out or searching for that sense of belonging. So I took a deep breath and I looked at and smiled at every single person at the table and said, "I don't drink now." They were stunned. But the evening moved on, and that evening was a big turning point for me in my life. Moments like these become those beacons shining the light on that new path that you're deciding and choosing for yourself. I didn't just stop drinking. I started to live a life that I truly wanted to and that was truly mine and on my own terms. The tension between what was and what could be began to shift for me. I started to explore different things. I started to build a new life that seemed exciting for me. Quitting alcohol was not the silver bullet that solved all of my life's problems. Far from it. But it was like stepping out of a cage that I didn't even realize I had been in. Suddenly, I wasn't looking at life through those beer goggles that I had been for 26 years. I started to see everything clearer, sharper. I could see opportunities. I could make strategic moves that previously I just hadn't noticed. I stopped labeling myself as being alcohol-free. I stopped labeling this new journey as being alcohol-free. I just started to live a life that was much more aligned to myself and truly what I wanted to do. I remember all of those firsts, the first networking dinner that I went to when I wasn't drinking. I was so nervous and anxious even, but as the dinner progressed, I found myself actually enjoying the authentic interactions, the genuine laughter, the real conversations that didn't require the crutch of alcohol. Being alcohol-free also seeped into my business. The newfound energy, focus allowed me to take the business to the next level that I hadn't even dreamt was possible. I poured myself into my work, creating, innovating, and making a real difference, and I loved it. My passion was no longer dulled by hangovers. It was alive and thriving, and I was so shocked at how much I could get done in 5 days when I wasn't spending 2 days hungover. But maybe the most remarkable change that I noticed was inside myself. I discovered parts of me that I didn't even know existed, and I became a lot kinder to myself than I ever had been before. My self-esteem grew, and I actually began to like myself. Nowadays, I'm really happy with the person that I am. Obviously, I know I have my defects, as everyone does, but I accept them and I can identify them easily, and I'm working on them. Before, if you asked me if I even liked myself when I was drinking, I couldn't even look myself in the mirror. I didn't even know who I was back then. I think alcohol for me hasn't just altered the course of my life, it's completely redefined it, giving me the opportunity to write the second half of my life in whatever way I want to do that. Now, sharing my journey isn't just about my own story. It's about empowering other people to take control of their own lives and to break free from whatever is holding them back, whether it's alcohol or something else. If my story resonates just with one person, then I've achieved my purpose. Now, my story isn't about hitting rock bottom hard, clawing my way back to real life. It isn't filled with horror stories of what can happen on those drunken nights out, but it is a story of self-discovery, of realizing that I'm so much more than that boozy Brit, the identity I'd subconsciously created for myself. It's about slowly unwinding the threads of my identity from the grip of alcohol, rediscovering truly who Emma is. And in those 9 years, I've discovered that Emma truly is more than enough. She's creative, ambitious, compassionate, and full of life, and just has a zest and a curiosity for life. And I'm now helping others on their own journey to becoming alcohol-free. In place of hangovers, there's clarity. In place of fleeting, fake confidence, there's genuine self-esteem. In place of numbing out the world, there's experiencing the world in its ups and downs, the peaks and troughs, what make up a beautiful life. Instead of losing identities, it's about creating your own identity truly aligned with who you are. My name's Emma, and I am not an alcoholic.